So when it comes to Adcorp's June Employment Index, as I was mentioning earlier, interesting note has been made distinguishing trends when it comes to permanent and temporary workers in the unskilled and semi-skilled categories when compared to the high-skilled and professional services jobs. Run us through this trend that's emerged.
Well, basically at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, there were 5 consecutive months of growth in employment. It was very little growth, but it was growth. And we thought that perhaps the economic cycle as it improved and the recovery as it extended would result in increasing job numbers. The last 2 months, however, have indicated sharp drops in the employment figures. In June alone, over 120,000 people lost their jobs throughout the economy, permanent and temporary for the first time in about 7 months. So the weakness in the employment situation is not apparently going to be fixed by our recovery. So we now, I think, are in officially a situation of jobless growth, where the economy in some sectors is 20 or 25% higher than it was prior to the recession, and the economy is doing relatively well across many measures, but employment is in the doldrums. I think we've got to recognize perhaps that there is an employment crisis. Politically, I think there's been more of a move to put jobs at the top of the political agenda, but I think there's still a lot of chaos in the diagnosis of unemployment as a problem. The Economic Planning Department of Minister Patel, they've put out a really fanciful fantasy type plan of how jobs will be created. The National Planning Commission has probably been closer to the mark in diagnosing the issue of what is causing unemployment, but there's no indication of where the solution will come from. So I think government is lagging the problem by 5 to 6 years. And really, I think we're in a crisis situation looking at these latest figures.
Especially where we're in a context where we're well into strike season. We've got predictions marking a 22% increase in strike activity this year compared to last year. And that, many saying, set to exacerbate the employment picture, especially on the lower end even further. I mean, the kind of impact you see this having, you know, looking at the stage at which we're in to strike season right now?
Yes, I think the strike season is going to be, it's going to involve the greatest number of work stoppages and person days lost due to strikes that we've ever seen in South African history. In fact, the post-apartheid era was supposed to bring industrial peace as conflict between employers and employees receded. But in fact, today South Africa has the 5th worst ranking in terms of industrial conflict in the world. So in fact, our strike action, our strike activity, the militancy of our unions is rising in a political context where there really should be industrial peace. I think this year we're looking at particularly problematic strikes. In the last 3 to 4 years, the trend has been toward more strike activity in the government sector. This year, we estimate that 68% of all the strikes will be in the private sector. So unions are greatly extending their influence. They're stretching, they're flexing their muscles and stretching their legs. I think employers can prepare for a real battle season over the next 6 months.
Of course, you're looking at a pie that is, you know, stable in size that needs now to be distributed. And the whole argument is that we're looking at an escalating wage bill which impedes that jobs growth. What kind of impact do you see this having, you know, at this stage?
It has a drastic long-term impact. I mean, 40 to 60% of all economic growth comes from growth in labor productivity. And South Africa's labour productivity currently is declining by about 4% per annum. Most of the productivity we observe in the country that gives rise to economic growth is coming from capital equipment and machinery. So companies are doing the economically sensible thing and shedding their workers, and they'll continue to do so. I can't see anything on the horizon that makes it look optimistic from a job creation point of view. The 2 laws that are most negative for job creation, which are collective bargaining laws, which push up wages irrespective of productivity, and also dismissal protections, whereby employees not performing on the job can hide in their jobs without any consequences. I think those 2 laws need to be significantly revised. but the prospects of them being revised are close to nil. Just about every serious commentator is talking about the revision and the necessary revision of these laws, but there's absolutely no movement. In fact, the Department of Labour is going in the opposite direction, as you know, with the laws that are currently under discussion at NEDLAC.
Taking a look at the picture now, where to from here on out? Because from what you're saying, the picture looks pretty bleak and set to get worse moving forward.
Well, I think the economic recovery is well underway, and it has been for about 15 months now. Sectors like retail, motor vehicle sales and manufacturing are up 22 to 25% above the levels before the recession. So there are sectors that are growing very strongly, but there's been no employment response. I don't expect that there will be an employment response until 3 or 4 years' time. In fact, I think we're going to settle into this period of here and there, a few jobs created, primarily high-skilled jobs, and mostly jobs shared. I think we'll be settling into that pattern for the next 3 to 4 years.
And where that job creation does happen more so on the side of government as opposed to private sector?
Well, the government has been greatly extending the payroll, which is not sustainable. That has to come to an end this year. They'll run out of money, according to the financial predictions, the medium-term expenditure framework. They'll run out of money to add to the payroll during the course of this year. So we can't expect a huge amount of job creation from government. I think the job creation that government hopes the private sector will undertake is basically a fantasy. So yes, we've got 3 to 4 troubled years ahead. Some sectors will show worse losses than others. I think financial services and retail and wholesale trade, they particularly are going to show weakness.
And in fact, we've seen Pick n Pay come to the fore, just illustrating in its drive to attack that cost base. It's letting over 3,000 employees go.
You know, Pick n Pay has had a different approach to labour relations than ShopRite or any of the other large retailers. So Pick n Pay is in the unusual situation where it has a 30% higher wage bill than its peers and is really getting nothing extra from its labourers. So Pick n Pay will probably shed another 12,000 jobs over the next 3 years. Otherwise, its financial viability in the long run is precarious. But so Pick n Pay has a slightly unusual thing going on, but retailers are the biggest job category in the country. Financial services is not far behind. Those are the big labour-intensive sectors of the economy, and they're going to be shedding jobs.